Chapter 10. "How are we doing, pilot?" asked Colonel Kozlowski. The man was bent over, away from her, obscuring the motions of his hands. Around him ranged a convex field of lights. LCD screens played spectacular Spectrum games. Loom points glittered, waiting for computer input. From this angle, she could see his bald spot, like the top of a hairy egg. "Fine, Colonel," he said in a monotone. "Almost finished." His elbows swiveled, his head nodded. One last telemetry check? The culmination of a final primary diagnostic of the Rutzia's sys-ops and structural integrity after its long cruise through the sub-Einsteinian planes of warped mathematics. One more flourish of his hand, and then he turned to her. "What's up, Colonel?" He turned so that now Kozlowski could see that his hand was nowhere near any of the controls. He held a pencil and a book of crossword puzzles. The blocks in the puzzle were all filled now. "An interesting form of duty report, Captain," said Kozlowski coldly. The man's lined, pale face remained impassive. He shut the book, slipped the pencil behind a large hairy ear, and folded his arms together. "You forget, Colonel. You got a nice long snooze. I got to wake up for a few weeks to check on things. Part of my job. Got to keep something going to prevent the Inui from driving me nuts. Little diversion of mine." He tapped the book. "Got a whole library of them. After 26 years in the Marines, I've got lots filled too. Next year, I retire. Bought a nice little chicken ranch on the Ulma colony. And then, I don't want to see the inside of another freaking interstellar vessel, or for that matter, the inside of another crossword puzzle book, again." Just the inside of chickens. The pilot captain's name was Hastings, Philip Hastings. Hastings shrugged. "The ancient Greeks used to study bird entrails to predict the future. Wonder what a split open one would tell us now." "A few tomorrows of many spilled bug guts, hopefully. I take it by your inaction that everything is functional. We're on course. Minor things like that." "We've got navigators and co-pilots and engineers to take care of that garbage, Colonel. I just oversee and coordinate." Hastings looked like a good soldier gone to seed. Beer belly, slack skin that had a waxen look that toned muscular bodies get when they don't get exercised for a few years. He had thinning brown hair and a network of burst capillaries in his nose. From the look of him, he wasn't just going to raise chickens upon retirement. He was going to do some serious drinking. Nonetheless, she, and doubtless Daniel Grant as well, had been assured that he was the best in the business. That he was a burnout did not seem to be so important. "What can I do for you, Colonel?" "I'm briefing the troops. I thought you might like to join us." "I'm not going down to that hellhole. Why should I?" "I thought you might find it educational. These bugs have popped up all over the universe, and they spread via ships, as you know. Thought you might like to know some tactics to use against them." The captain sucked a lip. "Thanks, Colonel. You going to tape the meeting?" "Yes." "I'll watch it some other time." "Miles and miles of crossword puzzles to do before you sleep?" Hastings scratched his nose. "Something like that." "I am in command, Captain. I can order you to be at the meeting." Then you already would have, wouldn't you? You gave me an option, and I'm exercising that option. He leaned forward and tapped LCD displays. Besides, we're in a planetary system now. A strange system can have all kinds of phenomena waiting. Gravity wells, black holes, as well as the usual meteor showers, comets, asteroids. I like to ride close shotgun at times like these. He tapped his book. Besides, I've got some more puzzles to do. She was ticked off at the guy, but he'd rummaged up a good excuse, so she really couldn't pull rank. She just wished the Admiral had given her someone with a better attitude. That was all. Just make sure we don't crash into any moons, Captain. Captain Hastings turned to his left, where a miniature holotank filled with blips and sparks and readings hung. No moons in our immediate future. He opened his puzzle book and went back to work. Kozlowski turned and stomped away. She stopped at her cabin first. She went inside and splashed some water onto her face. Had she done the right thing? Should she have made Hastings go to the meeting? He was right about not really having to, but his lack of interest, his insolence, annoyed her. She had the command here. He should be doing not only what she told him, but what she suggested as well. Kozlowski wiped her face with a towel, looked into a mirror. She had a lost look to her eyes. Light years from home. She'd fought for her planet for a very long time. She'd learned the basics of space travel so that she could carry the battle against these creatures to their home. Now, though, like some mythological being, she felt cut off from a source of her power. Nonsense, of course, foolishness, all just knots and complexes of neural patterns, easy enough to blast apart. She was a fighting machine, and she was just taking a ferry to another part of the battle. Still, why did she feel so homesick? She'd popped out of hypersleep a full 2 days before the others, so she could do some work with the tactical computers, as well as knock some of the stasis sleep out of her brain. Wrapped up in maps and facts, figures and projections, inventorying weapons and supplies, and rebriefing herself on the armor, she'd been in her own little world. Now, though, with a full day of troops waking up, the whole thing was starting to get to her. 30 troops were going to jump down right into the thick of thousands, maybe even millions of creatures that could give even biblical demons a scare, with only some half-proven experimental weapons to do the job. Okay, girlie, she told herself. Just knock that look right off your repertoire. Either that or get it out of your system, here and now. There was no reason for this kind of doubt. The hive world had been raided before. True, there had been casualties. However, there had been survivors. She'd studied their reports. Wilkes, Billy, what's her name? Nasty stuff, but compelling. Kozlowski had no illusions. You deal card hands from the bug decks, you come up holding some casualties. Now though, here on her first big extra-Earth mission, she'd watch the troops get up today, stretch and go through their metaphorical thawing. And when she saw the vulnerability in their eyes, that moment of terror, the "oh shit, here we are" expression, she felt what they felt. Even with that asshole Grant. Ever since what had happened with Peter Michaels, maybe She was just getting soft. Of course, there was a reason she'd pulled the hollow stunt with Grant. He'd been making noises before sleepy time that he wanted to jump down with them for the mission, to see it firsthand. She was just trying to discourage him, that was all. Maybe, just maybe, the meeting would rattle him. When she thought deeply enough about all the implications, it sure as hell rattled her. She closed her eyes, did some inner self-composure exercises. What came up wasn't calm and a deep peace, though. What came up was Daniel Grant. She didn't feel good about him being here, not good at all. For complex reasons she didn't care to deal with just right now. Even though she'd promised herself she wasn't going to do it, she went to her bag and pulled out a medicine bottle full of the reason Daniel Grant bothered her. She cut a tablet of fire in half. She'd tried to give it up. No go. Maybe after this fracas was over. She washed the half tablet down with a glass of water. Then she finished getting ready for the briefing.